So I'm going to hand over to you and yeah, absolute respect for stepping up for your community, and privileged to have you.
Hi everyone. I would also like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, play and work, which is also Wurundjeri, and raising my family here in, or what Melbourne likes to be known as, Naarm, and pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. And I also like to acknowledge my ancestors, my mum, my grandmother, who without them I would not be the woman that I am today, and for my children, because without them I wouldn't have the story that I am, and I wouldn't have the determination to be the woman that I am and become the person that I'm becoming. And I'd like to just acknowledge everyone who is in this whole process and acknowledge humanity, because I think that the world is shifting very, very quickly. I think in a lot of positive ways as well, because for so long we've been stuck in this paradigm of achieve, and it's been very Western dominant, whereas I think this current situation really gives us a chance. Well, we're being forced to sit still for a little while and kind of just, because we don't know how this is going to play out. And I think that for a lot of people that have been born in Australia or Western nations that haven't experienced anything like this, for anyone that hasn't come from a war-torn country or severe poverty, convenience is around every corner unless you live in remote Australia. So I think this is a real big shift for all of us, and there's knowledge and wisdom and so much to unpack from First Nations cultures around the world that I think we haven't even begun to utilize. So I think there's a real opportunity here to shift conversations and empower people to think differently.
So beautiful. Where would you like to start today?
I think I'd like to, it's going to be a bit more of a yarn and a bit more of a storytelling, and I'd really appreciate anyone that has any questions or their concept of what a warrior is, because I know that a modern day warrior is more understood as a battle concept or a fighter, and that's not the angle that I'm coming at being a warrior from. It's, for me, a warrior is really, I've actually got a beautiful quote here, and it's, the warrior is not someone who fights, for no one has the right to take another life. The warrior for us is the one who sacrifices himself for the good of others. His task is to take care of the elderly, the defenseless, those who cannot provide for themselves, and above all, the children and the future of humanity. And this was from Sitting Bull, the chief of the Lakota Nation. And when I found that, it really resonated with me in terms of the type of warrior I am and the actual, what I'm talking about when I talk about the warrior within. So I'd like to kind of go through the genesis of the warrior within and how that came to be. Why does it matter? I kind of guess my journey to this point, what I believe it is, how you can find your own warrior within, and the potential impact and ripple effects of people stepping into this space, and then kind of any resources that I have, and would love to just have a conversation with people after that.
Yeah, it's great. I think I've just put it in the chat, so if anyone wants to comment, they can. If people want to put up their hands, I can also promote people in to talk to Chantelle if we want to have a bit more dialogue. So
yeah, that would be amazing.
Tell us more. Where do you want to start the story?
Look, the genesis of the warrior within is something that's very new, and I did a bit of a post this morning on most of my LinkedIn socials to share this, and I hesitated for a couple of days and I almost thought about pulling out, if I'm being completely honest. The warrior within is a very new concept. It's something that's very close to my heart, because I've lived a lot of my life on autopilot, or reacting to the world that I've been given, and kind of just listening to that little voice inside that's kind of drawn me to where I am. I'm very stubborn, and it can be very tunnel vision. It's like, okay, I want to do this, I'm going to go and do that. And I don't often know how, I just know the what and the why. And I think for me, it's only been in the last couple of years that I've really started to delve into deeper self-awareness, understanding myself, and really understanding, how did I become this person? what's helped me, but also what kind of things haven't really helped me, and how am I evolving into the next chapter of my life. And I think that's kind of the basis of where I'd like to start with this whole conversation.
Sounds lovely. Annie's already asked the question, but why don't you start where you would like to start, and we'll move from there.
That's a powerful question, Annie. I'd love to share through my story, and then if I haven't quite covered it in the sharing of my story, I'll definitely attack that one, because it's something that's so important, and it's something that it's a very big priority for me now, is to break down victim mentality, sense of entitlement, and a lack of gratitude, because I severely see this a lot in a lot of young people that I'm working with. So yeah, I'd just like to start by sharing a bit of that story, and we can kind of go from there if that suits everyone.
Yep, works.
Okay. So I am a proud Barkindji Ngimpa Mullyanguppa woman. My tribes are from northwestern New South Wales, and my European heritage is Irish, English, Scottish, Sri Lankan and Chinese at last check. And my children are also Pacific Islander. They're very proud Tongans. And it's interesting, in our household we have two of my kids are very much more the Polynesian. I have one that's much more Polynesian. I have one that's a bit of a chameleon and likes to fit in wherever. And then I have one that's very much my desert flower, and she's really staunch on her Aboriginality side. And it's been an interesting journey for me with my Aboriginality, because what does it mean to be an Aboriginal person in the third decade of the 21st century? And I think this is going to be a really big shift, because I know for myself, in rooms of people of colour, sometimes I feel out of place because I don't have dark skin. Sometimes I think people look at me and think, oh, she's just an ally, or she's just someone who's curious. And then when I'm in rooms that are dominant of non-Aboriginal people, it's always, oh, how Aboriginal are you, or what does that even mean? And I think these are going to be conversations that are interesting as we evolve over the next couple of years. I grew up, I'm the third eldest of 18 siblings, mum and dad together, and then mum and dad separated. I grew up in a small town in northwestern New South Wales called Dareton, and I was basically raised by my father and my non-Aboriginal grandmother, because my mum wasn't able to take care of me. Through knowing what I now know about trauma and the impacts of inherited trauma, but also lived experience of trauma, I know that my mum loved us, and she did the best she could, but both my parents were in their own way highly dysfunctional. But the one thing I never had to question was that I was loved. And it was through that, and being the oldest living at home at the time, I had to step up and look after my younger siblings. And from a very early age, I had to learn to stand my ground. It was either you got pushed around or you fought back, and I learned to fight back. And that evolved into not always being a positive way of fighting back. I didn't have anyone there to kind of help me shape how to channel that energy and how to find my voice in a positive context. So I got to, I had to always fight. There was no choice. And I wasn't fighting for myself. It was never about me. It was always about my siblings. And then as I got older, it was about changing the paradigm, because I'd had people say to me, oh, statistics are against you. Your brothers are more likely to end up in jail than they are to finish school, or you're more likely to end up pregnant or dead than you are to finish school. And it's interesting, because whenever people would say that to me, I'd say, okay, watch me. I'd get this really defiant energy. If it was directed at me, I'd kind of just curl in on myself, because I'm actually not that confident. But whenever it was directed at my loved ones or people that were vulnerable, more vulnerable than myself, I would feel this energy expand, and I would just stand my ground, and I would really ground myself and go, no, that's not okay. And now looking into, I'm a big fan of Brené Brown's work, and she's really kind of guided me, and that's how I came to this definition that I'm now kind of unpacking. And I want people to understand this is an evolving concept for me. The warrior within, living and leading from the heart, living courageously and daring greatly, is something that I want to build as a legacy that is around much longer than I ever will be. And when I looked into Brené Brown's definition of courage, it's actually a Latin word for heart. And in its original form, or its earliest forms, it was to speak one's mind by telling all of one's heart. And that's how I've always told my story, is barefoot, no prescript, and from the heart. And that's how I've lived my life as well. It's always been having that gut feeling and following through. So when I was in school, and I realized that education was really, really important, and I knew that I didn't want to live my life the way my parents had lived theirs, and they were a product of their circumstances. I mean, my mum was born during the time of the stolen generation, and my dad, he was the youngest child of my grandparents, and my grandfather was actually a prisoner of war for 3 years, so he had severe PTSD. And your history is really important, because your history defines your starting point and where you ended up. And for me, understanding my parents' history and my grandparents has really helped me understand the world they lived and how they became the people they are, and that then impacted on how they could parent and raise me and my siblings. And I really wanted to break that cycle of intergenerational trauma, of poverty, of low expectation, and of low aspirations, and give my children something different. And that's kind of the starting point of it, because so many people said it couldn't be done. And I realized how many people were watching me, and this was even before I had my children. So for me, that's how she was born, the warrior within, or the part of myself that I step into when I need to. But she's just she's one part of me. I find that I'm very nurturing. I can be very shy, and I can be very vulnerable, but I've always had to have this very masculine energy, because my entire life I've either always been too much or not enough. So over the last couple of years, I've gone, you know what? Stuff it. For those that I'm not enough for, you are welcome to leave. And for those that I'm too much for, those that find me too much, either hang around because I'm just getting started. Because a lot of my life has always been on autopilot, or taking the opportunities that I see in front of me. I never intended for any of this sort of stuff to happen. So at the current moment, my resume sits at, I'm a 3-time world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a sport that I started for mental health. So I developed severe postnatal depression after the birth of my twins. And I didn't want to take medication because we had family history of addiction, and I didn't want to give any more control over to something else when I had already lost control to my depression. So I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I started training, used it as a form of physical therapy, and from that beginning, I'm now a 3-time world champion. I was told in school that I wasn't good enough, and I had a very fragmented education, because I had to miss a lot of school because I was either home looking after my younger siblings, or I was missing school because I didn't feel very welcomed at school. I was severely bullied, a lot of lateral violence, and just not fitting in, really. So I just decided that I wanted to become a teacher, because I knew even back then, and I don't know how I knew, I just knew that I was different, and I wanted to be someone who could help other people like myself, because I knew I had a lot of potential, but people were treating me as the person I was, as opposed to who I was trying to become. And I was constantly always trying to do better, but you can only do as good as what the skill sets you have at the time. That's why mentors are so important. That's why elders are so important. I mean, Western culture has so much to learn about the value of elders, and not the elderly, about people who have had lived experience and who have wisdom. Like, there's so much value there. And to have older people connecting with younger generations, I mean, it really is true when they say it takes a village to raise the children. I'm so grateful that I'm not raising my children on my own. They have so many other mums, they have aunties and cousins and everything else, and they're being raised in a jiu-jitsu gym. Like, there's so many badass women there, but they're also seeing guys that get their asses kicked by girls and women, but they're also seeing women getting their asses kicked by guys. And it's not about male or female, it's about physiology, it's about strategy, it's about timing, and sometimes, a lot of the time, it's about heart as well. And I don't think a lot of kids get exposed to that sort of thing. My kids have seen me cry on the mat from exhaustion and quit and tap out, and they've seen my coach help me up and say, come on, it's time to go. It's time to go again. These are the times that you need to pick yourself up and fight, because you only can fight or perform to the level of your training. That's what we've always been taught. And my coach, Tiago, was always about the community. It's never about yourself. As a fighter, you go into the ring or the mat and you fight alone. as in you and that person, but you have all of that energy and all of that preparation that can only be done with your team and the guidance of others. And when I speak, I say I a lot, but in my world, I equals we. So when I'm speaking about myself, behind me in my, since the beginning dream time, all the ancestors that come before, like that came before me and fought so that I could be here. Next to me are all my brothers and sisters that are trying to either do the same thing I am, or we're trying to carry those that don't have the skills or the capacity that we do, so that we can all come together. And I belong to many different communities. It's interesting because most people think I'm only interested in First Nations women or girls. I am Aboriginal, but I'm fair-skinned. I'm a woman, but I'm also a mum. I'm a fighter, but I'm an older female athlete. I'm an elite athlete, but an older, mature age athlete. I belong to so many different demographics. And it was during school that I decided I wanted to be a teacher, that I wanted to empower others through knowledge and through sharing. And I'm doing exactly that, but definitely not in the, whenever I started something, I could never have imagined what it evolved into. Some people know from a very young age what they want to be. That's never been me. I've kind of just gone, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I've started on that journey. And I found that by taking that first step and moving forward into that journey, that other things have opened up. And I've failed school. I failed year 12. I had to repeat. I had to change schools because I realized that my teachers were judging me based on who I was rather than who I was trying to become. I've had fallouts with family. When I was 18, I was getting into street fights because I knew how to stand my ground, and I'm quite a solid built female. I would go out night clubbing, and if the boys wouldn't take no for an answer, I'd say it once, and then if they tried to do it again, I'd make them take no for an answer, and I developed a pretty good right hook. And it's funny, I like that feeling. Like it was a form of power for me that I didn't have in any other arena. And it was my way of being grounded. And I was getting into a lot of trouble, and so I had an auntie that decided I could learn with some self-discipline, and she introduced me to martial arts. And that was actually where I got introduced to karate, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and I actually met the father of my children. And initially I stuck around for a boy. I'll be completely upfront. It wasn't for the martial arts. It was definitely for him. And the years kind of just flowed by. The first couple of years weren't very significant in that part of the journey. But after I failed year 12, decided to repeat because I was determined to finish. And then I got accepted into university, into an alternative pathway. And I started studying teaching. Did really well for a couple of years, and then I lost my mum, which absolutely devastated me because I hadn't had the chance to grow up with my mum. I was taken from my mum's care because I was sexually abused by a family member, and it was thought that I'd be safer with my father. And to lose her at the point when I was just becoming a young woman myself was absolutely devastating. And I've had these ups and downs in my life where I'm on a really good path, and then something will happen and it will really take me into a dark place. It's not like I've just had one significant event. I've had many, and I'm only 36. After we buried mum, I basically dropped my studies and I was still working and stuff, but I was in a really dark place. And then I had my eldest daughter, Nacinta. And she was really the moment that grounded me and led me. It was the start of the path that I'm on today, is because I'd always wanted to be a mum, and having her made me realize this isn't about me. Whatever I'm feeling is important, but how I choose to live my life will impact this child who did not ask to be born into the world. And I think that's how I've had my greatest success, because I've realized that through my actions, there's a ripple effect of consequence, and how I choose to show up. Children don't do what you say. They do what you do. And as a parent or anyone that works with kids, they know this, particularly young children, they will copy you, they will mimic you. And kids feed on your energy as well. And how you feel about yourself, the actions you choose, really does affect them. And that's always been my goal, is by being my best self and trying to figure out my path, there's that ripple effects of my choices and my actions on those that are in my circles, but also the radiance of my energy that goes out into the world, but also comes back to me, who I'm allowing into my life. And it was at that point with her that things changed, but it was after the birth of my twins in 2009 that I developed severe postnatal depression. And I got to the point where I was so sick, I actually hurt my daughter, and I was capable of killing her. And this is something that's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can say it like that. So if it's triggering for anyone, I apologize, but I think it's also important to share our truth. And it was in that moment that I went into a really deep hole, but it was also the moment of my rebirth. It was my transformation. It was the beginning of this journey. And it was then that, with the help of my partner and my sister and her partner, that I decided to go back to jiu-jitsu and use it as a form of physical therapy. And that's all this ever was. It was never with any intention to be a world champion. I just started training. I started getting better. I started to develop my physical self to match the emotional and spiritual strength I'd always had. And it all started to kind of come together. And I had a vehicle with which to explore that. And I didn't have to apologize in this arena for who I was. And it began to shape the next chapter of my journey. And I could bring together all of those different experiences to be something healthy. And it was then that about 2 years after that, I'd started competing and I started to get some national titles, and I realized, okay, I'm actually pretty good at this, and I was enjoying myself. I started eating differently, I was training, and there was two positives to this, and there was negatives as well. The negative side of it was that I was always constantly getting asked, why do you eat like that? Why are you doing this? And I realized that a lot of people didn't understand why I was doing this, and I was being different. I was doing something that had never been done. I didn't grow up with sport. When I was 13, I had 3,000 novels in my bedroom. Like, that's how unsporty I was. And I'll confess, they were all romance novels. I was into historical romances. I was only ever allowed to play basketball with my cousins because I was tall and I could defend. But if I ever tried to shoot the ball, geez, I would cop it on the way home on the bus because I was so uncoordinated. My cousin taught me to dance in our shed. Like, I was stiff like a robot before she taught me how to move. So it's very interesting to see that I could go from that to now being a world champion and still actively training and competing. And then after a little while, I got invited to share my story with a group of women who were all mums. And it was the first time that I spoke publicly about my journey to get to that point. And it was then that I realized that my lived experience, the journey that I was writing, was helping people. And that's when the storytelling started to come into it. And it was then that I go, how far can I go? What is possible? And I decided I wanted to try and be a world champion. Now, to put context, I was 27 when this idea first came to me. We had no money. I was still studying. We were living in Mildura. Never lived in the city before. Like, I'd been to Adelaide, but Adelaide's a very laid back country feel city. So I didn't have any roadmap, and I didn't have anyone to look to that could give me a blueprint. So it was okay. And then when I decided to share it with people and they went, yeah, right, as if that could happen, that just stoked the fire, because I realized I had to believe enough in myself to take that step, because others couldn't see what I could see. But hopefully when I started to walk that journey, I could bring others with me. And it was about challenging the paradigm of my community about what is possible, but why it's important to take these steps, because it's not just about us, it's about leaving a legacy, and it's about planting seeds for trees that we may never eat the fruit from. Like, I may never see the effect of the legacy that I've had. So yeah, that was how the whole journey began. And when I got to Melbourne, my culture's always been a significant part of my life. And giving back and being a part of the community has always kind of been a responsibility. Nova Peris talks about it quite a lot. She says we have an inherited responsibility to show up and do our best and be our best selves. It's not about being the best. It's about doing the best you can with what you have, who you are, and from where you are. Because we've had people fight so that we could be here. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a refugee, or whether you're a First Nations person, this applies to everyone. I think we all have an inherited responsibility to try and show up and do our best. Because by doing that, we we can break down barriers, and we can open up new doors, and our kids and our grandkids will inherit a different legacy to the one that we've been inherited. And I think that's the role of any generation, is to try and move the needle forward, and evolve with the struggles that we've inherited, but also the gift of the past. And Western culture is very individualistic. It's very much, if it doesn't make you happy, leave. It's very much achievement orientated. And you listen to a lot of motivational podcasts and they're like, don't sleep, grind, hustle, everything else. Where's the self-care? Where is the self-love and the balance? Because this is a journey. We're supposed to, yes, you're supposed to push and you're supposed to grow, but if you look at any tree, or you look at nature as an example, it has its seasons and it has its time to push through. And we also like to rescue people as well. We have, if you try and cut a butterfly out of its cocoon, it will die, because it is only through that struggle and having to push through its own cocoon that the blood can get to the wings and it can learn to fly. Like, we can be there to make sure no other predators get to it and all that sort of stuff, and it's protected. But without the struggle, we don't get the learning. And I think that's why this concept is so important to me. But it was after I won my first world title that I was sitting with my auntie, and she's like my cultural mum. She raised me culturally because my mum couldn't. And she said to me, she's like, I finally get it. You're our Barkindji warrior. And it's still a moment that gives me goosebumps, because for a long time I knew that nobody understood. I've never been someone that people really get. I mean, I'm a mum, I'm a fighter, I'm a businesswoman, I do this and I do so many things, and people either go, how can someone do so many things and do them well? Or you're spreading yourself too thin. It's like, well, this has been me my entire life. It's not just something I've decided to pick up. And it was there that the Barkindji warrior was born, and it's actually where this design came from. And I've decided to get it imprinted on me because it's imprinted on my heart. And now it's there as a daily reminder to go, no matter how hard things are, you've got a whole legacy behind you of support, of women who fought for women's rights, of First Nations people who fought so that we could still be here today. So we could, someone like me could call myself Aboriginal and be proud of my Indigenous heritage. I'm proud of all the heritages that I'm privileged to belong to, but it's my Aboriginal culture that really grounds me and calls to me the loudest. So that's the culture that I choose to identify with and explore and walk with. And I think, to me, the warrior within is about showing up to yourself first. It's about, we need to understand who we are. You need to own your own shit as well. You need to own your own shadows, because it's not about running away from those things. It's about, you need to be able to sit with yourself and sit with your pain and your own shadows, because it's only until you can understand that you can really shine the brightest. Because it's about managing your pain so that you can move through it, so that it doesn't restrict you and it doesn't hold you back. Because the two common responses with trauma or pain, we either repress it or it defines us for the rest of our lives. In our culture, you sit with pain. There is no timeline. It's not, okay, shit, we've got a funeral, we've got 2 days of leave. In the Western concept or the current workforce, it's like, okay, I've got 2 days to go and bury a significant loved one, and then I'm expected to show back up at work. It doesn't work like that. Obviously, you've got to have a modern day concept for it, but we have scars for a reason. The scars are not there to define you. They're there to guide you. They're a part of who we are, and it's our scars that give us the wisdom. I mean, you can't see the stars unless it's dark. So our shadows are a part of us, and by hiding from them, they unconsciously, they tend to determine a lot of our reactions. And it's through, like, I mean, Brene Brown's work. It's about leaning into your pain and understanding it and leaning into the discomfort, so that you're not inflicting pain on others, but you can understand it and be able to respond to it. And that, to me, is what the warrior within is it's about understanding yourself first, and then understanding, okay, what has my life experience given me that is my calling to teach to the world? And it might not be your living. It might not be the thing that you make money at. It might be the thing that you love to do and that you're being called to share with the world. And it's through those learnings and those experiences that's your gift for the world. And it's the balance. I mean, for me, being a 3-time world champion, I've got 3 degrees. I've got a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Teaching, which took me 10 years to finish. I've got 3 amazing, amazing children who are so resilient and teach me every single day. And it's for them that I do a lot of my stuff. It's about being a better woman and being a better person for them, so that they inherit something different. But it's not just about inheriting, it's about what I'm living and who I'm choosing to be in the day-to-day. And all of my achievements, people tend to get put off by my story. They're like, oh, I can't be like her. She's one of those. She's an overachiever. Anything I've done, I never did to impress people. I did because it was the opportunity in front of me, and I hope that it shares with people the potential of what's possible. If you own your own shit, you do something about it, and if you're going to be in shit, shit's really good for planting things in. It makes really good manure. And that's all I've ever done. And I've figured it out as I've gone. I didn't know how to be a world champion. I didn't know how to train. I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know how to be a storyteller. I just kind of started sharing my story, and now it's a business. And I don't know where I'm going to go next. It's the potential to just want to help people and do something with my life. It's interesting. I have 2 medals here. This is one of my World Championship medals. They're heavy and they're amazing, but they don't mean anything unless I do something with them. It's amazing to be a world champion, but in jiu-jitsu, you're a world champion for the 5 minutes you've got your hand raised. That's it. When you come back to the gym, everyone's quite happy to kick you up the arse and show you how much work you've still got to do. But the medal that I hold close to me all the time is this one. And it's from last year. It's from the World Championships in America last year. And it's a competition I should not have been at. I wasn't prepared. My life needed more of my focus than my jiu-jitsu. So I wasn't showing up to the challenges in my life. I was running from them. I wasn't allowing myself to sit still with everything. And I allowed myself to have the ego of going, I'm going to go, I can win another world title. I don't need to train for it. I've got all these skills. And I got to the competition. I was unprepared. Financially, I couldn't afford the competition because being a self-funded athlete, you have to balance out things. And I got there, and my opponent she was massive. Like, she was huge. And in my head, I was like, yep, I'm in trouble. And then we shook hands on the mat. I bowed. I wanted to run away, but I walked up to the mat and I bowed and got on the mat. And I shook her hand. I'm like, I'm really stuffed now. She was so strong. And I kind of gave up. I quit. And I ended up getting taken down by her. And anyone that, all you have to do is Google jiu-jitsu and you'll understand. But you start standing, and the idea is to get the person on the ground, and you want to choke them out or you want to make them tap out to pain. That's my playtime. That's what I do for fun. And I lost to an opponent who wasn't necessarily better than me, but she was better prepared than I was. And she showed up and she'd done the work. I had not done the work. I shouldn't have been there, and I didn't deserve to be there because I hadn't done the work to be prepared. So I keep that medal, my gold medals, I think I've got, last time we weighed it, it's 26 kilos worth of medals, and they sit in a drawer. They're not out. The only other time I ever bring my medals out is when I'm sharing my story with young people, because I want them to see what's possible. When I actually share my story and I show a video of me getting picked up 5 foot in the air and dumped on my head in Africa. I never share a video of me winning, because I want kids to see it's about being able to get back up again. It's not about the win or the loss. It's about being able to get back up again. And if something's going to beat you, and it will, failure is a part of striving. Failure is a part of it. It's not if you fail, it's when you fail. And that means putting yourself out there, whether you're in business or a job or at school. If you're going to go after something, you're going to fail. You're going to hit a wall. It's about being able to get back up again. And if something's going to beat you, don't let it be yourself. Like, don't beat yourself by not doing the work. And that's why I keep that medal I keep the silver medal in eyesight, because I never want to make that mistake again. There's actually a quote here that I'd like to read to you, and it's from the Warrior of Light by, I always stuff up his name, but Paulo Coelho, I think. And it says, every warrior of light has felt afraid of going into battle. Every warrior of light has at some time in the past lied or betrayed someone. Every warrior of light has trodden a path that was not his. Every warrior of light has suffered for the most trivial of reasons. Every warrior of light has at least once believed that he was not a warrior of light. Every warrior of light has failed in his spiritual duties. Every warrior of light has said yes when he wanted to say no. Every warrior of light has hurt someone he loved. That is why he is a warrior of light, because he has been through all of this and yet has never lost hope of being better than he is. And for me, that's all this ever is. It's about trying to love myself for who I am in the season that I'm in and having compassion, but not settling or just coasting. It's always about leaning into that discomfort of growth and asking myself, what is the best I can do today? How can I show up? And to me, that's what the warrior is. It's about showing up for yourself first and foremost, because we can only serve the world as best as we're serving and loving ourselves. And we're a part of a collective. But if you look at the response to the coronavirus, how many people are just worried about themselves? Like toilet paper. Do we forget that less than 100 years ago, we didn't have flushing toilets? Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, I'd be more concerned about making sure we have medication and access to clean drinking water and some food, because we can live without toilet paper, people. But we can't live without a humanity, and people have forgotten. And for me, we're a part of a collective, but in order for me to be the best part of that collective, I need to show up and be the best that I can be. And then if I'm doing that and then I help others around me do that, we create these ripple effects that just keep going. It's like one seed grows a whole tree, but look at how much fruit one tree can bear. But in order for that tree to bear good fruit, it has to have deep roots. It has to have a solid trunk. And I think it's really important now more than ever. We need this. We need people showing up to own their own shit. And it's not about freaking out. It's about being realistic, but it's also about having hope. It's about living in the world as it is, but still striving for the world that we want it to be. This upheaval, I think we've never seen anything like this since 9/11. I think the world is not going to be the same again after this. And whether that's good or bad is up to us. And that's the response we take individually to make it the best that we can and to learn from it. I know that with me, leading from the heart right now means working on my business, working on the back end, doing all my studies. Like, I've literally got all these books in front of me. There's about 30 books behind me that I can read. There's always something I can do. It's about the 5 fundamentals of good health is nutrition, staying hydrated, having movement, stress management, and having meaning or purpose. Like, what are you actually doing right now that you can do to help yourself to manage this situation as best as you can, and helping those around you who may not be as set up or as equipped as you, and then going, okay, and thinking just in the short term, what am I doing and what's kind of the plan after that? And I think that's the modern day version of a warrior. It's about us showing up for ourselves. It's about looking after those who can't look after themselves or who need some support. And seeing how it goes, because that's all any of us can do right now. There's so much uncertainty.
Wow. So I've got so many things I just want to go deeper on and all of that, and they're just listening to so many, looking at all of the fabulous comments come through. The Aboriginal culture has foundations in storytelling, Chantelle, and what you've just shared with us is phenomenal and incredibly generous. And I'm just going to give people a minute to pause and just come up with some questions so we can have a bit of a chat. But I just want to touch on this is beautiful poetry in what you've just shared, and you touched on Brené Brown a little bit, and I'm a massive fan of hers as well. And there's this beautiful poetry that you referred to her, yet your story has come from the arena, like the arena of school, the arena with jiu-jitsu, all the way through. Absolutely beautiful. And it feels it's an absolute honor to come and stand in your arena and hear you share your story. And for people that have questions, just pop them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, I can turn on your audio so you can talk to Chantelle yourselves. But I'm actually shaking, and so much of what you said resonated with me. some absolutely great quotes, and yeah, I have trauma, and I've wrestled with in the metaphorical, not the jiu-jitsu sense, and yeah, it's everyone's just filling the chat with, so honoured by you, Chantelle. That's from Karen. Annie said, amazing, thank you. Keep having an impact, and leading from the heart, I think, is all we can do.
Yeah.
In this situation right now.
I think I'd really love to address Annie's question about how I shifted my mindset from being the victim to the victor. Look, I think it evolved because I had to, because I had no choice. It was either, and I think that's always been my grounding thing. If it's ever been about myself, I fail every single time. When I've gone to a competition, I've gone and it's become about the win, or it's become about what other people think, I lose every single time. Even with this, I shit myself today. I had to go to the river. It was actually, it was my partner who suggested that I go to the river and I ground myself. And I just said to the ancestors, I just let it go. And I said, let me be the vessel for whatever needs to come out and what people need to hear. And I had my notes and I trusted. And like, if you ask me right now, what did I say? I'll be like, I don't know. I just let it flow out of me. And I think that because I had my siblings to stand up for, and I realized, I didn't know at the time, but my parents were at their capacity. I had to overcome that. And I didn't know about mindset. It was not something that was spoken about. So I think I had a purpose. I was anchored in purpose, and that allowed me to pull myself out of and break the chains that were holding me down in the hole that I was in. And I guess the more people threw shade at me and said, oh, you can't do this or you can't be that, the more I took pleasure in sticking it to them by doing exactly the things they said I couldn't. And I don't recommend that as being as a driver. It wasn't the whole driver, but it was a part of it. And I realized, and for a while I became a bullied, and I think I still have victim mentalities at certain times. Part of me goes, why haven't I broken through? Like, I've got all these accolades. I shouldn't have to be hustling for opportunities. Like, I'm a national NAIDOC sports person. I'm 3-time world champion. And for a long time, for a year, that got to me. It broke me that I was still having to hustle, that I couldn't support my family. And I had to choose between doing the sport that I loved and that I still have ambitions to do. And I knocked on people's doors and looked for sponsorship, and I was never the right fit. And then it got to this year, I got to late last year, and I said, you know what? Stuff it. I'll make my own doors, and I'll create my own table so that anyone can come and sit at the damn thing. Anyone that's willing to own their own shit, overcome it, and wants to help other people or help the world, you're welcome at my table. But you have to do something about it. And I realized that not everyone has that capacity. So I'm doing that. And then by doing that, I can then help other people. And I think and it's by learning. I had to face myself. And sometimes I think I don't know how many of us actually stop and look at ourselves eye to eye in the mirror and look intensely into our own eyes and go, am I proud of the person that I am? And it's not about beating ourselves up. It's not about judgment. It's about, am I being the best that I can? And I'll be completely open and honest here. I've looked back over my journey and I've only ever done the surface level of work. I've never gone deep on things. I get easily distracted because I'm always curious. I'm like, oh, what's this over here? I decided to do wrestling. I took up wrestling because someone said I couldn't go to the Olympics. So I decided to try it, and I ended up at the Olympic qualifiers in Africa. And I'm like, how the hell did I end up here? I got bashed for my efforts. This amazing female athlete absolutely destroyed me, but she gave me something else. She realized by showing up, sometimes that's the best thing. You may get beaten, but by having the courage to show up, and as Brene says, you feel your way back to your feet. That's how I've done it. And a lot of learning, and it's a long period. It's a long period. And in my culture, at 36, I'm still young. I get told by my auntie to sit down and shut up because it's my time to open my ears. She goes, you've got one mouth and two ears for a reason, because you should spend more time listening than talking. And as you can hear, I love to talk. I could talk a dead cow back to life. But for me, that's what it's been about. It's about being anchored in purpose. It's about owning the responsibility to have the courage to just take that next step. And it's about fighting for others who may not necessarily be able to fight for themselves.
And that's absolutely what you're doing. I can't believe the day before yesterday, we'd never spoken, and because of your courage, so for people that don't know how Chantelle ended up to join us today, when I shared who was on day 1 and day 2 earlier of Vid19 earlier this week, Chantelle shared it and reached out to her community and her network of people and said, hey, we need to change the picture, and we need to get more people of colour, more of your own community into this conversation at this difficult time. And when I reached out to Chantelle and said, you're absolutely right, can you do Friday at 1? She came back and said, yes. And you know what? My next week, one whole weekend, my next week is going to be so much better because you said this. And I'm sure many people that are listening feel exactly the same. In the couple of minutes we've got left, where next, Chantelle? What can we... I'm sitting at your table already. I knocked the door down myself.
So, to be completely honest, it's Muhammad Ali, it's Oprah Winfrey, Nelson Mandela, Dwayne Johnson, and Richard Branson. So by that I mean Kathy Freeman, Muhammad Ali both created legacies that transcend sport and bring people on a journey. Muhammad Ali, he believed in himself, he backed himself when no one else did, but he stood by his morals. That's what I want to do with my journey. I've still got some questions to go, well, how good can I become at jiu-jitsu if I stick it out and I want to be a black belt world champion? So that's my goal there. Oprah Winfrey, Dwayne Johnson, Nelson Mandela have all experienced horrific things and challenges in their life, but they made it mean something. They did something about it, but then they've brought people along with them, and not in an aggressive manner. They've done it in a way that empowers the world. And I hope to do the same thing. And Richard Branson's a really smart business model. People pay 25 grand to go and sit on a damn island with him. And I think I want to see First Nations knowledge, women's knowledge put up on the same sort of pinnacle to go, well, what can we learn together? And with a smart business model, I want to use the profits of my personal brand and my business model to bring them together to be able to create the Warrior Dreaming Foundation and provide mentoring and trauma-informed self-development to help people show up and find their warrior within, and then create, when it starts to generate wealth, is to be able to provide grants and business opportunities to people who are trying to change the world through their own influence. I think Gemma had, what are your strategies to reset and bounce back when you experience setbacks? I think it's about being able to own the setbacks and understand what part you played in the setback. Like, was the setback because you didn't have the experience, or you didn't have access to the resources or the networks, or was it because you didn't show up and do the work? And I think once you kind of own what was the cause of the setback, and then you can make a strategy and try and learn from it. And sometimes it happens straight away. They say hindsight is a beautiful thing. And I think it was the Apple creator, my mind just went blank, and he said, it's only looking back that you can connect the dots. And I think for me, it's about going, I've got this amazing resume that I know that confidence is born of knowing that you can do something. Courage comes when you decide to take the first step without knowing the result. And I think for me, I know, mate, people think jiu-jitsu is hard. Trust me, jiu-jitsu is easy. It's playtime. Going to roll around with someone on the ground, doing what I love, even when they're trying to kill me, is fun and easy compared to raising young people in this day and age. And how do they feel grounded, and how do they move forward with the rapid change of things? That shit is hard. Trying to solve sustainability, that shit is hard. So when I actually focus on what part I play in the world, when I have a setback, I look at what other people are dealing with, and I think it keeps me grounded, and I go, okay, what's one thing I can do right now to learn from this failure? What can I learn from it? But also, what can I do next to move forward?
Thank you so much, Chantelle. I see the warrior in you. I'm sure everyone else can. The heart, the love, the storytelling, brilliant insights, and great vision. I can't wait to see your vision come true. I absolutely know that is going to happen. Just the determination in your voice, the passion with which you speak. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit and listen, and look, the chat's filling with praise and love, and sending you energy over Wurundjeri country to your home.
Thank you so much. And I mean, it's such a gift when you you challenge someone on something and they're so open-hearted that they go, yep, great, wasn't aware of that, thank you, and then they do something about it. I think you're a true leader in this space. You've pulled together your resources and you did something that you thought needed to be done, and you kind of just did it with what you had in front of you. But then you were so open when I made that comment, and then I think it was Sean who said, oh, you know, you can self-nominate and stuff like that. So yeah, so I'm so grateful to have been here and had kind of this opportunity. And I think the last question that I'd really like to address quite quickly before we finish up is like Claire Fisher wrote about purpose and the struggles, and how do you connect to your purpose and know that you're right, that you're still on the right path. And I think that's where going deep helps. It's about making time to sit still, because what I've realized is that it's manifesting is a real thing, but you can't sit there and wish for it to happen. It's about going, okay, this is what I feel is right now, move in that direction, and then trust that it's not about holding on too tight. It's about having an idea of what you want to do, moving in that direction, but being open to other things coming in, because by moving in that direction, sometimes it opens up other things, and sometimes it's easier to know what you don't want to do and who you don't want to be than it is to know who you want to be. And it comes with time. Like, I'm 36 and I think I've only just really now started to understand my purpose. I've always understood it in a broader context, but in terms of actually, I'm not a 30-second pitch person. I don't do elevator pitches. It's not me. And some people are like, oh, you're too much for people. There's too much on there. And I said, I'm okay with that, because I want people who want to sit with me. I want people who want to explore the opportunities and unpack. And I think that by really listening to myself, and it doesn't always have to be hard. Sometimes it's the things that come to the easiest and that light you up, that are really your purpose. And you might not be able to get paid for your purpose. And it's not always about loving what you have to do, because the reality is we all have to do shit we don't want to do. But if you're willing to do the shit that you don't want to do in order to get to where you want to get to, then I think you're on the right path. And it's about constantly readjusting. It's like being in a ship and you're looking for that lighthouse. It's about, am I moving in the right direction? Trusting your gut feeling. How is life feeling? What opportunities are coming to you? And that would be the advice I can give, is it's a journey, and it's just about kind of moving in that direction and not being afraid to say no to the shit that doesn't matter. Because I think that when we try to say yes to too much, we get lost. So
beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I want to keep talking, but I have to start the next session.
That's fine.
And so for everyone, I know you've already got so much praise in the chat, but if people want to follow your journey, Chantelle, is it LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook? What
LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook, you can find me all under Chantelle Thompson. Also the Barkindji Warrior, and I've also got a website which is in development, which is just chantellethompson.com. And please, if you need anything at this current point in time, or you want to have a chat, or I've triggered something both positive and negative, please reach out, send me an email, send me a message. I'm available.
Thank you so much, Chantelle. I am going to be sitting at your table as soon as this conference finishes. I can't wait to see where this goes, and I hope to share more stories with one another. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you everyone for joining.
And good luck with the rest of it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.